Howdy, and welcome to Math Boost Camp. Today's session is about creating a math-rich environment in your classroom. By the end of this session, you will have at least one tool or technique in your teacher toolbox that you can use in your classroom in the coming year. Let's get started. Astronauts have a unique opportunity to perform a spacewalk. Spacewalks can last anywhere from 5 to 8 hours. In order for astronauts to be successful and survive in their harsh environment, they need special tools and techniques to help them survive. One of those special tools is a pressurized suit. This pressurized suit helps balance the oxygen levels for the astronauts. Another tool that astronauts use is a special tethering system. This tethering system makes sure that they remain safe and don't float away in outer space. What I love about astronauts, though, is not only do they have tools and techniques, but they have backup tools and techniques too. In the event this tethering system doesn't work and they break free, they have kind of like a jet propulsion pack on their back, which helps them zoom back to where they need to go. I know what you're saying, Laura. What does this have to do with Math Boost Camp and building a numeracy rich environment? Well, astronauts need those special tools and techniques to help them survive in their harsh environment. And as teachers, creating a mathematical environment for our students, we need tools and techniques that will help our mathematicians survive and thrive. And that is what we're going to be talking today in Math Boost Camp. Let me set a little bit of context about the mathematical thinking in classrooms of the past. A teacher was a keeper, a dispenser, and tester of knowledge. I had a few of those when I grew up. But now in recent years, because of a lot of brain research and the advancement of science and technology, we've learned that teachers have a much different role in a mathematics classroom. Teachers are to be part of a community. They share in the process of learning in their classrooms. They're the model, they are a facilitator, and oftentimes they are a co-learner. If that doesn't describe you yet, sweet friend, I hope by the end of this session, we boost you to the next level so that you can be that teacher that we've described. Two words that you're going to be hearing a lot in today's presentation is respect and value. And in order to build a math-rich environment in your classroom, students need to know that they can be respected and valued for who they are and what they can become with your support as facilitator in their classroom. Risk-taking is going to be an essential part of this type of environment. Students need different types of support because we have diverse needs in our classroom, and so being able to provide that environment for our students are really going to help them thrive in the classroom. We are going to be talking today about 5 unique parts that together combined to make a math-rich environment in the classroom. So we're going to be discussing 5 things, and we're going to be starting with creating a productive classroom community. And a classroom community is much like a community that you live in, you reside in. It has all of the necessary things that you need to be a successful community member. And in a math-rich community, we need all of the tools that we can have to be successful in that type of community too. So there's 4 principles to having a productive classroom community. And the first one is teachers that have a positive classroom community, they believe that ideas are currency. So thinking about currency, it is exchanged, and ideas have value, and that value can contribute to the learning of other people within the community. Now, careful consideration needs to be made to each in a teacher role or in a student role also. So number one, ideas are currency. Number two, there's often more than one approach to problem solving. Students should have the freedom to explore methods and share strategies with one another in the classroom. Number three, students need to know that it's okay to make mistakes. I need to remember that it's okay to make mistakes. Errors create opportunities for growth, but only when they are examined and explained. So thinking about your classroom community, how can you cherish those mistakes and turn them into opportunities for growth in your classroom? And the fourth principle of making a productive classroom community is correctness or reasonableness of a solution depends on the math itself rather than the desired outcome or method or even figure of authority. Let me explain that a little further. Math makes sense. Students learn this when they're allowed to focus on reasoning and logic. A lot of times, the figure of authority, in our case, the teacher, they only know one method or algorithm for solving a problem. And this has happened to me before in classrooms. And a student comes in and they just know a different way to solve it. And we have to make sure that we relinquish that control and we provide a risk-taking environment that embraces students to find reasonableness or correctness strictly in the math and not what we think is the best way to solve the problem. Because let's face it, if we can solve it in a more efficient manner by using strategy X, of course we're going to want that for our students as well. So the four principles of productive classroom community. Ideas are currency. There is often more than one approach to problem solving. Students know it's okay to make mistakes. And four, the correctness or reasonableness of an answer is determined solely based on mathematics. Now, this component of classroom environment is more about how the teacher is perceiving their role and how you're making the students comfortable in the classroom. Okay? Our second topic of discussion today is classroom norms. What are the norms we want in a mathematic classroom that we're going to focus on is math rich? And I suggest 3 simple rules. I like the number 3 when thinking about rules, procedures, steps, because it's very easy to remember. A lot of things come in triads, and our classroom norms do as well. So the first one is, we in this classroom explain our thinking. 2, we listen to one another. And 3, we value and discuss alternative strategies. So number 1, we explain our thinking. It is very easy to get rolling through a lesson and determine that we're running out of time. That happens almost every day in the classroom that I've been a part of. So we want to make sure that we are allowing for time for this discussion, because as the students are discussing and explaining their thinking, it's solidifying their thoughts and it's applying the knowledge that we've been throwing at them. And so we want to make sure that we take a break and we allow students to explain their thinking, whether it be whole group, they share with a shoulder partner, just providing that opportunities to think. And when I was first teaching, I used to have an index card right in front of me where I would write the question or write the activity we were going to do and make sure to make an asterisk or a stop sign in my notes so that I would stop to allow students to explain their thinking intentionally. We want to be very intentional about asking this of our students. Another tool or technique that I use in my classroom for holding students accountable for this is if they just give me a one-word answer. 42. May you please use that in a complete sentence? And then the students, that simple sentence stem gives them the opportunity to reframe their sentence, because let's face it, if we want them to write incomplete sentences, they need to start thinking and speaking incomplete sentences as well. So sentence stems is a great tool or technique to build a math-rich environment in your classroom. Okay, listening to one another, we've discussed this, as well as valuing and discussing alternative strategies. So those are the 3 simple classroom norms that I suggest for building a math-rich environment in your classroom. So productive classroom community, then we have our classroom norms, and our third area we're going to be discussing today is the classroom arrangement. Now for you seasoned teachers, this is a no-brainer, but I want to make sure we're addressing all of the areas and spaces in the classroom as you are thinking about designing your space for the coming year. If you're a new teacher, I know these tips are going to be really impactful on your practice. We want to make sure that we're thinking about the activities that the students are going to be expected to do throughout the day. We want to create spaces for the social aspects of learning. Where are the students going to sit and discuss? If they're meeting with partners, what's an appropriate space? If they're meeting with a whole group, what's an appropriate space? We want to facilitate the movement in our classroom. When you draw out a map of where you're going to put things, it's really nice if you draw the actual pathways of where students would be moving. For instance, group number 1 is going to have to turn in their papers, so this is their path of movement. If they go from here to the small group area, here's their path of movement. And we want it to be fluid and flow throughout the classroom for safety and just for simple productiveness. Okay? We want to provide many ways of access for materials needed by the students and by the teacher. So if I'm in a certain area of the classroom and I know I'm always going to be using a dry erase marker in that space, having those accessible so I don't need to get up. Every time I get up, I'm taking instructional time away from my students. So how we can have the desired materials in their specific spaces to maximize student instruction. That's really a key target as you're designing your classroom space. You want to have a home space in any classroom, whether you're using traditional seating, table seating, or the new and hip flexible seating. Where is their home space? What I mean by that is, where are the students starting their day and where are the students ending their day? It might be in their desk. It might be in the carpet area of your classroom. So thinking about a home space. Then you also want to have a large group meeting area. I recommend this in preschool and I recommend this in middle school. This is one of the most helpful spaces in your classroom, is where can you all fit in a common space that's intimate and promotes learning. Even in my 5th grade class, I had a carpet and we sat around the circle and we participated together, and I cannot tell you how engagement boosted in my classroom because of the proximity. The students are close to the teacher, they are engaged, and they are focused. Now, one challenge to this environment in a higher grade level is sometimes just because of student size and shape, they might be uncomfortable sitting crisscross on a rug, and no worries for that. What I encourage those students to do is just pull up a chair. You can sit in the chair, but you've got to be close. I do not allow students to be back at their desks or back in a different station. I want us all to be gathered together. This is the large group meeting area. Every classroom should have one. Sometimes if you have a smaller classroom, it can be tricky, but I guarantee you can find a way to make it work. In this gathering space, you want to make sure you might have a math bulletin board designed for that area where you can have anchor charts that you're creating with your students. You might have a calendar, a hundreds chart, different tools that you can be using. It's also great just to have a general dry erase board there that students can solve problems and explain their thinking, or just like I have here, a pocket chart stand with chart paper, an easel, that works great. You want to have read alouds in this area, markers, pointers, manipulatives, anything that you need in order to deliver a whole group lesson. Then you want to have a small group area, and this is when you are meeting with no more than 6 students in a different space in the classroom. The most common space for this type of grouping is a kidney bean table in the classroom, and usually fits anywhere between 4 and 6 students. If you don't have access to that, you can use a rectangular table, a circular table, just a table that is in a different spot where the teacher has a space and the students have a space. I've seen in a lot of classrooms that they just use the whole group area and the teacher sits with all the students. Depending on your health, if you can get up or down, that might be dependent on how you design that space for your classroom. I personally like the table. You might want to think of other things like a clipboard, anecdotal notes that you want to take on your students, have a binder close, anything that you need for record keeping. The small group area is often used for intervening and differentiating instruction for students, so that's why we have those record keeping tools in that small space. And the final space in your classroom that you need to think about is if you're going to be doing math workshop, math learning centers, math workstations. There's a variety of different names for it, but it's a special space in your classroom that is for managing independent learning in groups, in small groups. And so these are the math workshop area. In that area, you might have a common place for all of the different buckets or bins with the materials that the students will be using. And you can have the paper management in there, the schedule board. We're going to be talking a lot more about that in future episodes, so make sure you stay tuned if you want to learn more about that. But those are the spaces you want to consider when arranging your classroom. Large group, small group, and the common math workshop area in your class as well. So we're moving on to the 4th area in your classroom, and that's organization for building a math-rich environment. And I must say, out of the 5 components of creating a math-rich environment, this is probably my weak point. But slowly but surely, I am devoting time to organizing my space, whether it be my home office here or the tools that I use when I'm out and about in classrooms. So some common things, which I'm sure you could teach me a lot more tools and techniques for organization, but placing materials of like items in separate containers, labeling every container. Some teachers like to actually open up the container and take a photograph of what is exactly in that container. They're not using images off the internet. It's what is actually the contents of the container, and then adding that to the label. That's one great use of labeling in your classroom. In order for younger kids to be more organized, having the word a lot of times for the contents of the bin is not very helpful. So using the picture is really great for supporting that. Eliminating unnecessary materials. If you're a seasoned teacher and you haven't used a particular material in several years, I advise you, just for the sake of organization, to pass it along to someone else, because you're going to have enough stuff. You're going to accumulate a lot of stuff for the classroom, and you definitely do not need more than what you're going to use in the classroom. So a few organization tips for your classroom. This is, see, I need more organization in my life. This is an example of one of my first years when I was in the classroom, and I just had a picture, and that is just an image off the internet with the word as well. So creating that literacy-rich environment in the classroom. And then I have it in a clear bin where students can see it. If you shop during back to school season, you can usually get a full set of these clear shoe boxes for a very cost-effective price. And what's nice about it is it's cohesive, it all looks the same, and they're perfect sizes for math manipulatives. So I highly recommend using clear shoe boxes in your classroom. There's also so many different and new teacher organization bins. If you shop the Target Dollar Spot, I'm sure you've seen an array of different things that you can get organized with this year. So a few little organization ideas for your classroom. The final component of creating a math-rich environment is the actual environment itself. What I mean by this is the physical space in the classroom. Now, some of the other components that we've shared today also kind of fit in this category as well, but we're going to go through it. So bulletin boards in your classroom, if you have a math bulletin board, a math action wall, or a calendar board, this is part of your physical space, so this is part of the environment. Oftentimes, as a instructional coach, I go in and one of my jobs is to read the walls. And what that means is I have a checklist of good, solid things that's, resources that teachers should have on their walls to help students. And I basically read their walls. I look around the room and I can tell instantly after I take a look on the four sides what is valued by the teacher. A lot of times I walk in a classroom and there's an alphabet chart and there's a vowel chart and there's all these beautiful things that have to do with reading, a beautiful reading corner in the classroom, but what's missing is mathematics. So that's why I think this topic for today is so essential, because we want to send a message to our students that math is important, we value it, and it matters. And there's nothing better than saying that on your walls with what you have up. You might want to consider having a calendar up on the wall, no matter what grade level you teach, because there are a lot of positive mathematical concepts that you can teach with a calendar. Sometimes at school, students have an agenda that's personal that they keep in their desks. This is part of their math-rich environment also. Problems of the day, problems of the week, this is all part of their math environment. Having an academic word wall with math words, not just sight words, but what words they're learning in math, vocabulary displays, diagrams, having math journals, math interactive notebooks in their classrooms. You can see here my bin of math notebooks, and having them organized as well. Having graphic organizers put up in your classroom. All of these are sending a message, a positive message about mathematics to your students. So thinking about that physical space and intentionally planning a space for mathematics. I am a little bit OCD, so I like color coding my spaces. So sometimes the bulletin board, like the header is in red, and that's for reading, and the students' folders for reading are red, their notebooks are red, and then each different subject is color coded. And it's great for the students because they become accustomed to that color and they know what they're looking for. This is a great technique for teaching younger students. When you say, get out your math notebook, and they're digging through all of their materials, they can easily go get it if they know that math is blue and it's marked in their desk. So another helpful tip for you to plan your physical environment and organize your materials. So we have talked so much about creating a math-rich environment. I want to mention one more thing that I find very significant when I read the walls in classrooms, and that's anchor charts. Anchor charts are not pretty pre-made posters. Anchor charts are charts that you create with your students with an intention to support or scaffold learning. And what I mean by that is if you are just learning a concept, you're going to give them all the information they know that they need to know on a chart. And what this does when you're building it together, it's teaching them how to organize their thoughts, but it's also giving them a space to help them when they're doing math independently to look back and check in on. One thing that I like to use when I'm creating anchor charts in front of the kids is I have some of this Post-it full adhesive roll, and what it is it's basically like big long white labels, but there's often times when I'm writing and a student is talking or explaining their thinking, and I'm writing and I make a mistake. And if I keep that mistake on the anchor chart, it will drive me nuts. So I found that getting one roll of this, I don't even use the full roll in a year, but by getting one roll of this and having this in my kind of teacher toolbox in my whole group area is very helpful, because you just cut it off, you cover it just like whiteout or correction tape, and then you write over it and you can't tell at all. So I love having this accessible in my whole group area with my anchor charts. Just another bonus teacher tip for you today. It is so essential that we create math-rich environments for our students, that we respect and value them, and we allow them to know that it's okay to take risks, it's okay to make mistakes, and there's opportunities to learn and grow, learning multifaceted strategies, algorithms, and tools in mathematics. By being intentional in the 5 areas we talked about today, the arrangement of our classroom, the organization of materials, the environment that we are in, the 3 norms we discussed, and the classroom community, you can guarantee that people will walk into your room, your students will walk into your room, and they will know that math is an important part of your grade level. I hope that this session has helped you learn more about creating a classroom environment that's math rich. I want you to stop and take a second and think about one thing that you learned in this session that you can apply immediately into your classroom, and please feel free to comment and leave some feedback on this session today. I hope you join us for the next session as we discuss more about mathematical understanding. Bye.